Hi, everyone. Before we get started on today's episode, I wanted to talk about something that happened here in Chicago recently. On December 21st, just 4 days before Christmas, a 33-year-old man by the name of Shuai Guan was checking his mail around 6:30 p.m. in the Bridgeport neighborhood where he lived. And as he did so, he was approached by carjackers who demanded that he give up his keys. And even though Shuai complied with their request, he was shot and killed anyway. Shuai leaves behind a wife and a 4-year-old son, as well as his parents. As you can imagine, this has been an unbearable tragedy for their family, and Shuai's wife is now left with the task of telling their son his father won't be coming home. No parents should have to face the pain of losing a child, and no child should have to endure a life without his father. This story really got to me, and I really felt like I needed to help out. There is a GoFundMe page set up to help Shuai's family pay for funeral expenses, as well as to eliminate some of the burden that now falls on Shuai's widow. I have included a link to the fundraiser in the description for this episode, and I'll also be including it on our Instagram page. And if you can't, or if you prefer not to donate, you can help by just sharing the link on your social media. The more it's shared, the better chance we have of alleviating some of this family's burden during such a horribly tragic time. Thank you, and with that said, let's get right into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to 1 minute and 43 seconds, a true Unsolved Mysteries podcast. And friends, there are so many cases out there that I could just spend so much time talking about, that calling them a mystery is an understatement. Some of these cases have so many baffling details that you struggle to come up with any angle that makes sense. And the story I'm about to tell you today falls into that category for sure. This is one of the most bizarre and baffling cases I've learned about where no theory really makes sense. This is episode 8, and that is the unsolved murder of Judy Smith, featuring my good friend Sohaib.
Hey everyone.
All right, should we dive into the mystery?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right, so we're moving right along in the sequence of unsolved mysteries that I want to tell you about, and this is one I learned about fairly recently. I found it to be so puzzling that it immediately became one of those cases I had to spend hours researching. So it all starts with a woman named Judy Smith. She was 50 years old in 1997, which is the year that she disappeared. And she'd been married to her husband, Jeff, for about 8 months. At the time she disappeared. She had known him for much longer. She worked as a nurse. So Judy was a nurse, and she met Jeff because she had cared for his father. So they had actually been together. They'd been married for 8 months, but they had known each other for much longer. I want to say 10 years or something like that.
That's a long time.
That is a long time. And so this is where this story starts. Jeff was actually Judy's third marriage. Judy had been married twice before, and she actually has 2 kids with her second husband.
Any kids from the first husband?
No. No. So 2 kids, 50 years old. The year is 1997. Jeff is a lawyer, and he has to attend a conference in Philadelphia from April 9th to 11th. So Judy is planning to go with him on this trip. So the plan was they would go together to Philadelphia, from Boston, I should say, is where they lived. They would travel from Boston to Philadelphia, and then after the conference ended, they planned on meeting some friends in New Jersey after that.
That's one horrible road trip.
Well, they were going to fly. I forgot to mention that. Why is that worse?
Because it's Boston to Philly to Jersey, like, ew.
It's all in the same region, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And you know what? Don't ew it, because we might have listeners from there.
Yeah, but
Shout out to all of you guys, by the way, if you are listening. Okay. So Judy's going to go to Philadelphia with her husband for this conference. They're scheduled to leave their hometown of Boston on the morning of April 9th, 1997. And this is where something kind of interesting happens. They get to Logan International Airport when all of a sudden Judy remembers she forgot her driver's license at home. And I guess at the time this was kind of a fairly new thing that they did. If you think about it, this is before 9/11. I think it was like a new requirement they made to
show your identity before getting on a plane. Who thought that would have been smart from the beginning?
I know, but I guess, prior to that, as long as you had a ticket, you were golden.
Oh, that's true. I've heard stories of people trading tickets and stuff at airports.
Yeah, so this was a fairly new rule. And anyway, I guess Judy forgot her driver's license. So,
and this is all basically the story the husband told, right? Because we don't know what really happened.
No. Well, it was actually, here's what happened. So she says, you go ahead and take this flight. I'm going to go home, get my license, and I'm going to take the later flight. So this was the morning. Judy's going to go home, get her license, and take a later flight. And as far as I can tell, it was confirmed with the airline that she did end up taking the later flight.
How crazy is that? That 25 years ago, it was nonchalant that you could take a later flight. Today, they'd make you pay full fare, like $500 to switch your tickets. Oh.
Well, I actually don't.
How times have changed.
I couldn't find any information on the cost, or if there was any cost. It's just that she did get on a later flight, and that it was confirmed. And there was a witness on the plane that reported seeing a woman that resembled Judy's. Again, I don't know if you could take that.
There's so much of this that's like, what?
Well, we'll get more into that.
How much do you really believe? Because who remembers? Like,
I know.
Who's paying attention to some random woman? But, whatever.
That is a good point, and we will talk about that as we get further into this. But, okay, so she shows up at the hotel. The couple was staying at the Doubletree Hotel in Philadelphia. And I guess she shows up around 10 p.m. And also I've heard that she brought her husband flowers to apologize for her absent-mindedness as a way to say, sorry, I messed up, and here are some flowers. There was nothing else to report that night. The next morning, April 10th, Jeff woke up a little earlier than Judy and decided he'd go down and grab some continental breakfast. So he gets breakfast, he gets back to the room a short time later and tells Judy, hey, the breakfast is really good, you should really go check it out. But Judy was about to get into the shower and she made some kind of joke like, oh, I'm going to go down there naked, or something like that, sarcastically.
Really, though? That's in the reports? Of all the things to keep remembering?
No, this is what spoiler alert, this is the last few moments that she's going to be heard from. So, I guess it's relevant.
Okay, fine. I guess that's relevant. But still, it's like, how do you remember that stuff? Well, it's like,
if it's my wife or husband,
enough.
If it's my husband or wife, I'd remember what they said. I guess that was his way of basically saying, everything seemed fine to him.
Right, normal times, just joking around. Okay, I get that.
So, this day on April 10th, Jeff had to go to his conference. She's getting into the shower, and Jeff leaves to go to his conference. And while he was at his conference, Judy was going to spend the day out in Philadelphia, going to certain tourist attractions such as the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall.
And let's remember, this is before everyone had a cell phone. In 97, you had to be like a doctor or somebody pretty special to have a cell phone. And it definitely didn't have GPS.
Well, yeah, and so they did have plans to meet back up later. So she was going to spend the day sightseeing while he was working. There was going to be a cocktail party later after the conference at 6 p.m.
And you can't miss that.
Can't miss that. So their plan is to meet in the room and then go to the cocktail party together at 6 o'clock. So Jeff says goodbye, and he goes on his way. After the conference finished for the day, Jeff went back to the room that he and Judy were staying in, and he was a little surprised to see that Judy wasn't there. But he wasn't worried. He wasn't too concerned. He figured maybe she got back before him and made her way down to the cocktail party and the two would meet there. Or maybe she had misunderstood what they had talked about earlier. So he goes down to the cocktail party, and Judy's not there either. So over the next hour or so, he kind of goes back and forth between their room and the party, their room and the party.
Right, again, he can't call her. He says to find her, and then it's also a different time where you're not checking in on your significant other every couple hours, which is a really funny joke where the reason our grandparents' relationships lasted so well is because they weren't trying to talk to each other 24/7. They left for work in the morning. You didn't know if they were coming back until they got back.
Wow, that is an excellent point that I didn't consider. So thank you for that, Sohaib. So as it grows later and later, he starts to become more and more concerned. Finally, he decides to go to the concierge, and the concierge says that they are going to go ahead and call some hospitals to see if maybe there was an accident that was causing Judy to be delayed. Now, earlier that morning, Judy had told her husband she planned on taking the Philadelphia Flash bus, the PHLASH bus, which is like a tourist-friendly bus. So Jeff actually paid a cab driver to follow the route the bus would take in hopes that he could spot his wife somewhere along the streets.
He thought that she might be, like, on the sidewalk somewhere?
Yeah, maybe lost or running late. He knew she was going to take this bus, so he thought maybe if he followed the route the bus was going to take, that he may see her waiting at a bus stop or just out and about somewhere. This is really, where he started because he didn't know what else to do. So
right. He can't track a phone. He can't call ahead. He doesn't know where she went because she's a tourist, and so is he.
Right.
So, I mean, majority people go missing in cities they're not familiar with. That's just how it works, just because you're not familiar with your surroundings. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So when he couldn't find Judy on the street, his next step was to call her children, his stepchildren. And what he did was he told them to go to their house and check the answering machine to see if anyone had called, and left a message for some reason. Like you said, no cell phones. Back in the day,
you had to leave messages and hope somebody else got them.
Right. So they go, they check the messages, there's nothing there. So finally, Jeff decides it's time to report Judy missing to the police. And initially, he was told that he had to wait 24 hours before he could report her missing. So he goes back to the hotel for the night and, has a sleepless night there, wondering where his wife is.
I mean, obviously.
Right. So before he actually goes back to the police the next day, remember, he's a lawyer, and there's kind of a lot of important people at this conference, from what I understand. So when he goes to before he goes to the police, he makes it a point to talk to Philadelphia's mayor and a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Both of them were also attending the conference with him. So he lets them know about his wife and that he felt the police were a little bit dismissive of him. And he goes on to say that he thinks that this conversation actually helped him because when he went to file a report, there were 2 detectives waiting for him, ready to take his report, welcoming him with open arms. So
goes to show it's not what you know, but who you know.
It's your connections, yeah. So that worked out in his favor. So they took his report. So right now, it sounds like your standard missing persons case, am I right? I mean, a woman goes out on her own in a strange city, and she doesn't make it home. One can assume she had an accident or met with foul play. But
she could be a John Doe in the ER. We don't know yet.
But trust me,
Jane Doe.
But trust me, this case gets so much more strange. And I'm going to get more into the nitty-gritty details. But first, I'm going to tell you about the next major discovery in the case.
Which is?
So, with no luck in finding his wife, Jeff has no choice but to go back home to Boston. But he actually hired 2 private investigators to try and find his wife. And he mailed and faxed flyers all over the country to try and spread the word about her in hopes something would come up. And
so 2 days later, it goes from just Philadelphia to the nation?
Yeah, so I guess, they looked in Philadelphia. He filed a missing persons report, and there was no sign of her. So eventually he goes back home to Boston, and then he starts, he hires the investigators, and he starts just sending this information all over the country in hopes that somebody would spot her, something would come up somewhere.
It makes sense. It's 36 hours. 72 hours is your limit. Like, statistically speaking, police don't think of somebody missing until you're gone for 36 hours.
Which is nuts to me, because that should it should be circumstantial.
Well, no, because then everybody's got missing kids and everything else who are just, like, sitting at their friend's house or something.
I mean, fair enough, but, like, if you know your family member well enough...
So if you know your family member well enough, you, like, in the first 36 hours, anything you can do is pretty much what the cops can do. Like, there's not much... They don't have some magic material, like, except just putting out bolos and stuff. Yeah. They don't have anything magical that can help you. After 36 hours, that's when the search gets wider. And 72 hours, I think, is the limit. If you don't find somebody within 72 hours, statistically, you're not going to find them.
I mean, that's unfortunately the sad reality. But yeah, I mean, that is... This case, I'm telling you, you haven't heard the craziest part yet.
Let's go.
Okay. So, they do find her, but it only raises more questions. So on September 7th, 1997, 5 months after Judy vanished.
Dang.
A father and son hunting for deer in North Carolina's, and I don't know how to say this, Pisgah, Pisgah National Forest.
Pisgah?
Pisgah National Forest stumbled upon what they thought were human bones.
Shoot.
This was a location about 9 miles from Asheville, North Carolina, and the medical examiner determined that this woman was a white woman between the ages of 40 and 55. And the woman had an arthritic knee and had a lot of dental work done. So she was unidentified at this point, but I think you know where this is going. And that is, I believe it was an emergency room doctor somewhere in the state of North Carolina, remembered seeing one of the flyers that was faxed into his hospital and said, hey, what about this missing woman? They contacted Jeff, Judy's husband, to get dental records. And sure enough, the dental records were a match. This was Judy Smith, found halfway up the side of a mountain in North Carolina, over 600 miles away from where she was last seen.
So
let me just let you react to that.
Could she have walked? No, that would be a long walk.
Are you joking?
I mean, in 6 months, you can walk 600 miles. 5 months.
I know you're not serious right now.
I'm not.
So now okay, let me just summarize this for a second. We have a woman who went to Philadelphia with her husband. They have plans to meet up later in the evening. Why is she in North Carolina? Why is she halfway up a mountain? It gets crazier from here. So,
I mean, I'm just going to say alien abduction.
No, you're not. We're not there yet. Let me tell you a little bit more. So, Judy was found, and they think that she was stabbed. And the reason they think that she was stabbed to death is because, although unfortunately she was only bones when they found her, because her remains were, and I know this is graphic and I apologize for that, but her bones were kind of scattered because of animals. And due to where she was found outside, in the forest. So her bones were scattered.
So there were already teeth marks from the animal scavenging her body.
Well, that's another thing that people do say, but I guess investigators determined they thought she might have been stabbed, and that's because
knives are different from teeth.
Yeah, so they found puncture wounds in her bra and her shirt and things like that. So
we know it's not Smokey the Bear.
But let me tell you something else though. So Judy actually had this red knapsack that she carried with her everywhere.
She a backpack?
Yeah.
You said knapsack.
Whatever. It was a red. Yeah, okay. It was a red backpack, and Judy carried it with her everywhere when she traveled, and that has never been discovered. But they did find a blue backpack with her. Now,
so she became a Democrat on this journey. What are we talking
you're
about?
done. Another crazy thing about this is that when they found her, the reason they were able to match her is because of her dental records. And they also, she had the wedding ring on. They were able to identify her by that. But she was actually wearing hiking clothes.
I mean, that's not strange. She was found on a hiking trail on a mountain.
It's strange because she was supposed to be in Philadelphia and nobody recognized the clothes that she was found in.
But 5 months had passed. There could have been a lot happening in that 5 months. Like, we don't know what she was doing.
Which we will talk about. However, well, I'm just saying. There were also an expensive pair of sunglasses found near the body.
So her kidnapper had good taste.
Well...
or her new sugar daddy. There's so many options here.
There are many options, you're right. And so she wasn't found with her backpack. She wasn't found with clothes that her family was familiar with. She was found with some cash on her, which matched what I think her husband said that she had on her the day that she was going out in Philadelphia.
That's weird.
Well, let me tell you something else. So, it's one thing that she was found in this remote location. It's another thing that you ask yourself, did she go here willingly or was she taken here? But I didn't tell you, there was a sighting of her in the Asheville, I think it was in the Asheville area, before she was found dead. And there is a store clerk that owns I think it's like a little boutique or something.
Did they identify her?
They did, but I know what you're thinking, right? You're thinking, oh, well, it could have been anyone that looked like her. No. And if you think, here's the thing, surveillance cameras weren't crazy available back in these days like they are today.
God, it was only 25 years ago.
But let me tell you something, though. It's more than they just thought they saw her. This store clerk actually had a conversation with her. And she said her name was Judy. Somehow it came up. I think, this case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, so there's actually a great segment out there. If you want to find it on YouTube, it's available. But, so this clerk was talking to her, and she actually told the clerk was asking, where are you from? She says this woman said she was from Boston. She said she was visiting Philadelphia with her husband, who was a lawyer attending a conference, and that she, quote, wanted to just take a trip down here.
So
which raises 1,000 more questions.
So I'm now going to sudden onset insanity.
That's a theory. Yep.
Alien abduction.
Okay, don't play with me.
Or straight up split personality. Boom! She hit her head, and now she's someone else, but she knows who she was, but she wants to be somebody else. It could be that crazy. I'm going to stick to alien abduction because that makes more sense right now, because the rest of this makes no sense. If you're missing for 5 months and you're not actually kidnapped, then, A, how do you still have the same money? By then you should have probably used the money that you had.
Well, I should have mentioned that the sighting of her in the store, it was actually in April, so it would have been around, I forget if it was the same day.
Oh, shit. That's even crazier.
I know
it's like was she living in this area for 5 months?
So as far as Judy's family knows, she didn't have any connections to the Asheville area.
No family, no friends, nothing in North Carolina. Because I can relate to that.
Well, the only thing that she had ever been in North Carolina for was her husband Jeff had a weight loss clinic in Raleigh. He went there for a I don't know what you want to call it, a camp. It was something where he was supposed to. Another thing I should mention, and that's a lot of people, blame the husband or think he may have something to do with it, because that's always where you look.
That's the first place you look.
But he was actually morbidly obese, and I don't say that. That's just factually true. And so, Judy was found halfway up a mountain, and he could not...
Yeah, see, that's a bad...
He could not have done it.
Well, no, that's a bad alibi. It's like, yes, obesity's your alibi.
No.
How about the fact that...
That's not the only part of it, though.
I think the biggest part of it is the fact that he was in Philly, and that people are tracking him in Philly. And
exactly. He was seen at the conference all day.
At a conference all day. He's got a solid alibi. But that doesn't mean he didn't pay somebody to do this shit.
And you know what? That is actually a theory that people do have. Now, I personally don't believe Jeff had anything to do with this. And the reason I don't believe that is because, one, he was seen at... Now, hear me out. He was seen at the conference all day.
Perfect alibi.
He was obese. So,
not an alibi.
He definitely couldn't have done this himself. Let's start there. Now, the payment thing.
What payment?
If he paid somebody to do it.
Hey,
I don't believe
some people take payment in trade. Like, maybe he had an expensive watch that he gave.
Okay, maybe. But the reason I don't believe it, though, is because...
Or her car, or her life insurance. We don't know what happened to all that.
Well, he actually... The reason I don't believe it is because he put so much effort into finding her. So
that's the best cover.
Okay, but... So, let's just cover it, though. Let's just go over this. He talks to the mayor and somebody on the House of Representatives.
Right, you gotta look like you're doing everything you possibly can.
He files a missing persons report. He faxes her flyers all over the place. I just don't believe that he did it. And actually, another thing that I want to say, Judy's daughter actually says that if Jeff says that she was in Philadelphia, and she's mad that anyone's even questioning it, because that's actually a theory about this case, which we can talk about. Let's just dive into that, and that's the theory that the whole thing about Judy forgetting her ID at the airport, some people have gone as far as to say that that's not true, and that Jeff is covering up something, that she never was in Philadelphia.
What could he be covering up?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, some people think, well, did she even make it to Philadelphia?
Well, wouldn't the hotel corroborate that, hey, another person checked in?
Well, if the room was under his name.
Yeah, but concierge see things. Like, they don't miss a lot. Like,
there was one witness at the hotel, I believe, that did report seeing her. But I'm just telling you, that's a theory in the case, is that Judy never showed up at the hotel, and it was all just like, for some reason, I don't believe it.
This is where some conspiracy theories get messed up, because here's the thing. There's only so many moving parts that you can control. In this case, I'm assuming that the cops talked to the hotel concierge and other members, and they're like, yes, we saw this person here at one point, because they have to do a timeline. Like, if you do a missing person...
Yeah, but people don't know that they're going to be missing before they're missing. Who's to say, like...
Well, no, people don't know, but hotels, even in the 90s, had cameras. Okay? Hotels had cameras in lobbies and stuff. Concierge would keep track of who's in and who's out within a few days. Like, we're not talking, oh, this was a month ago? Like, we're talking this was a few days... Like, this was yesterday.
Right.
Like... Can you remember somebody from yesterday? Probably. Especially if it's your job to track who's coming in and who's going out. Let's not forget that most hotels, like, they hire people specifically to be like, hey, your job is to make sure random people don't just come in and use our services, and that hotel guests get good treatment. So I'm assuming that they talk to, and we're not saying everybody has to remember, but even if one or two hotel managers or concierge or even housekeeping remembered seeing a woman, I would go with that belief, because they have no reason to lie.
No, you're right, they don't. I'm just letting you know one of the theories, and one of the theories was that she never actually was in Philadelphia, and that, maybe Jeff did something to her before she left, or before they left, or he left, and that's just a theory that's out there. I don't believe it. I'm just saying that's one of the theories. I personally don't believe Jeff is involved because of the money that he has spent on trying to find her. And sadly, Jeff actually passed away in 2005. And I just thought
honestly, I don't think Jeff is involved. I think that there's so many other theories that are more plausible because the timeline doesn't fit. Because let's be honest, Jeff had an alibi for the entire time that she's missing, where he's either at the conference, talking to the hotel people, or he's in an Uber, or not Uber at this time, he's in a taxi following her trail and then talking to cops. Like, he is, like, you can track him from when she was last seen, which I'm guessing the hotel corroborated, we saw this woman at X time leaving our hotel. Because they track this. Like, hotels don't want more, like, even if you get one room for two people, they are going to make sure it's only 2 people. Hotels want to make sure their services aren't being used by too many. That's how they make sure that, like, you don't get a 2-person bedroom for 12 people. Like, they must have known that she was there, and they corroborated that with the cops. And then Jeff has got everything tracked from when he got onto the plane in Logan, all the way through Philadelphia and back. Like, his timeline, I wouldn't actually question. Now, is it possible that he paid somebody to do this? I don't know. Did he have some sort of, like, non-liquid asset that he could have paid an assassin? I don't know. Like, there's so many crazy theories that we could go on with. Realistically, none of that makes sense, because what makes more sense, especially if you look at the evidence that we have, which is, if we believe the people who we're talking to, which is now, you mentioned that store clerk in was it Asheville?
The Asheville area, yeah.
And she saw Judy, and then, like, Judy being found in North Carolina. Most probable explanation is either an affair gone wrong, or an abduction gone wrong, or, I don't know, maybe this is, like, one of those really super kind people that you hear about who are super trusting, and someone told her, hey, we can go from here to North Carolina in a day and back. Let's just go. And then that dude just, like, held her captive.
That's 100% a possibility.
I don't know.
I mean, not a lot makes sense in this case.
And again, alien abduction works too.
Okay, we're not going there, no.
Why not? She got abducted.
We'll go there last.
And then they dropped her body off in North Carolina. Because you know what? Mountainside, why not?
Let me just throw another theory at you, if I could.
Probably not as good as alien abduction. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if I could match that, but... So, another theory outside of Jeff doing something to her is that Judy was going there to meet someone. I mean, in 1997, I don't know how big online dating was. I feel like
it didn't exist.
It didn't exist at all.
No.
But anyway, that is a theory, is that Judy was going to meet someone. And a lot of people, let me just throw this at you, a lot of people online have said that the fact that she supposedly forgot, quote unquote, her driver's license, they think maybe that she did that on purpose to, like, get some time away from Jeff and to go back and, like, plan her getaway. And what I don't understand about that, I'll just say right off the bat, is what's the purpose then of even going to Philadelphia?
Right. Like, that 9 hours that she might have gotten to herself, like, to go back, get the next flight and all that time in between, that makes no sense. Like, if you're going to plan something like this, at that point, you would ditch him at Logan and just go. Like, why go to Philly?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't get that. Because there's no logistical advantage to forgetting your ID and going home, or even just staying longer in Boston and then going to Philly. Like, if you were going to ditch the guy, just ditch the guy.
Yeah, and I mean, so on the Unsolved Mysteries segment, there is a woman, I believe that was Judy's friend, that said at the time of Judy's disappearance, the relationship was very tenuous.
A lot of times it's solvable. If it's not, it's usually not solved by running away. Especially if you have nothing on you. Like, it's usually solved. Like, this woman was twice divorced, right? She knew how to divorce a guy.
What I don't really understand about the divorce angle here is, sure, let's say, you're really upset at your husband, or you need some time away, you need some time to yourself. Fine. but she was never not in contact with her kids. And her kids never heard from her either, which is what gets me about this. If you were mad at your husband, fine, but wouldn't you at least let your kids know where you were? That's why I don't really.
Actually, that's
hard for me to understand.
That's a good explanation, because her kids seem to be, especially her daughter, seems to be like very close to her mother, and doesn't seem like her mother would just up and leave like without an explanation. So maybe that's the angle we need to focus on. Okay, it most likely wasn't voluntary. It most likely was an abduction of a type. Even a silent abduction where she met somebody in Philly and they decided to take a quick trip out of the state just to get away. And that quick trip turned into the middle of nowhere, North Carolina, where she was held captive. Like, it's not unreasonable to think that this woman was abducted without force, and then just kept, how do I say this? Basically kept against her will.
But, okay, fair enough. But what would be the purpose for that? Because they ruled out robbery because she was found with her wedding ring, with cash on her. What would be the purpose?
I don't know.
Of
Abducting
her.
I don't know. Talk to a kidnapper. Why do they kidnap people?
No, but okay. Well,
I don't know all these reasons.
I mean, I'm not involved, but like I read about a lot of true crime cases, and I know that the motive is usually money. Affair is another option. Like, affair is an option, but like, one, how would she have met this person? Because internet, like online dating, like you said, was
people were having affairs before the internet. Okay,
fair enough, but like, why North Carolina? You can still
meet strangers anywhere, and people still moved around in the 90s. It wasn't like you were stuck in your one town. We're not talking about the 1890s. Okay, we're talking about the 1990s.
But why North Carolina?
Maybe that's where the dude was. Maybe that's where he's from.
Well, then how did he meet this person?
Maybe he was in Boston or Philly while she was there, and then they just got together and they kept it going. Okay. I don't know. You could meet anywhere, and you could end up anywhere. It's not like... I mean, there's people who meet halfway around the world and then end up on the other half. Like, it's not impossible to meet somebody and go to a different town or what.
So let me throw another theory at you that's been popular on the internet. And that is that the body that was found in the forest was not Judy, and it was misidentified.
Well, you said they identified her by dental records.
Correct. And
they identified her.
Yes. However, a lot of people argue that dental records are not as accurate as DNA.
Okay, but DNA is also expensive, not as accurate always, and then you also need a comparative sample. Like, a lot of times DNA isn't done because if you identify somebody by dental records, you're done. You've identified them. They don't go further to keep identifying somebody once an identity has been matched and it's reasonable.
Correct. And
so that's why I don't see why people are clamoring about DNA. DNA is like, it's great when it's seen on CSI that they track everybody by DNA, but as thankfully we're not in Soviet Russia where they have a database of all of our DNA. So in America, you need to have a sample to compare it to. And yeah, they could probably compare it to her kids. But even then, it's going to be, it's probably not necessary when you've identified a person by their teeth.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest, I've read a lot of threads about this online, and I've seen several dentists actually comment on the story and say dental records are very precise. It's almost 100% when you do dental records.
And do we have a clean enough sample of her DNA to test? Like you said, this body was found in the forest in a shallow grave after being, scattered around or scavenged by animals. There may not be enough clean DNA to get a decent test.
Well, this may be a stupid question, but can't you obtain DNA from bones?
I do not know that.
Now we probably sound like fools to people listening that are probably either like, screaming at us. Like, well, the point is...
dental records are enough. They've identified the body.
Well, the point... you know what I think? The reason I think that a lot of people are so focused on dental records versus DNA, I think is because the story is so crazy that people are, like, they don't believe it. So they're looking for a reason where maybe it... But here's the thing.
They need to go on my theory of alien abduction and they dropped her off in North Carolina.
No. What I think is, it's crazy either way. Whether she was misidentified or properly identified. If she's properly identified as Judy Smith, which she has been by dental records... The question is, why was she in North Carolina?
Having an affair.
Did she go willingly?
Maybe.
If it's not Judy, let's say,
then
where is Judy now? And who is the person they found in the forest?
Yes.
It just raises more questions.
Well, useless questions, right? It's like, yes, you can question. This is the whole the practice of questioning everything even when there are facts. It's a problem in America. I hate the question nowadays, like, do you believe in climate change? No. It's not a matter,
don't get political.
No, but it's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of fact. Right? So here, we have a fact that this woman was identified by her dental records.
Yeah.
Which are scientifically matched to prove that it is this woman. Like, there's not much, like, you can keep denying fact, but it doesn't change the facts.
But what's crazy is, like, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it is probably her. What I'm saying is like, her. There's so many factors in this case that just make your mind it's just crazy.
No,
so I think that's what a big reason is for why people are questioning it, because it's like, it's so weird and it's so bizarre. You can't imagine why this would happen.
We only think it's bizarre and weird because we don't know the actual explanation.
True.
In reality, it's probably the most benign thing. Because as joking as that alien abduction thing is, let's understand that realistically, she moved to North Carolina from Philadelphia via plane, train, or automobile somehow.
Yeah. She
was in North Carolina hiking on a mountain range physically. Like, she didn't magically disappear from Philadelphia to magically reappear.
But people may be saying that, but that's not what's baffling to people. What's baffling to people is why.
Motive is always weird. Like, it could have, like, that's the thing. Like, we could try to figure this out. We could try to, like, come up with theories, but at the end of the day, like, until you...
That would be the purpose of the podcast.
Right, no, but that's the point, right? Like, there's no answer to this. Like, we can make theories, we can come up with explanations, but there's no right or wrong in this one. It's just theories, because unfortunately, with all the time that's gone by, with the lack of evidence, there's not much else anybody can do. Like, you can't... There's no way of tracing this back and trying to find whoever killed her somehow, unless there's some unknown evidence, like they had a mysterious swab of something on her body that they kept, and they're waiting for something to spike on the, on APHIS or something, where they have the national database of criminals. Like, unless there's something that we don't know, like lack of evidence, lack of information, lack of any real understanding of what happened. There's a theory that she could have just gone on her own and been like, oh, I'm out. Or she hit her head and didn't know where she was ending up and got on a train and just ended up in the middle of nowhere. Like, we don't know.
True.
And that's why the alien abduction theory has some merit. It's like, it's just as plausible.
No, it doesn't. Okay, so, like, just reviewing this. If we're going to go through theories, we'll number them off. Okay, 1.
Really?
Yeah, 1. Her husband did something.
Maybe.
2. She ran off to have an affair or to meet someone.
Maybe.
3. She injured herself in Philadelphia and had amnesia and got on a train and didn't have her mental whereabouts about her.
I'd say less likely, because that seems a lot for somebody with amnesia to do.
Well,
I mean, usually people who hit their... Again, amnesia is not that common of an event. It is pretty rare. I mean, we see it in pop culture too much, but in reality, it doesn't happen just because you knocked on your head, unless you're in a soap opera. So in this case, like, unlikely, but most of the time, people who do have amnesia, they're just found roaming around the city they get it in, not in a different state altogether. So,
sure.
So less likely. I think the more likely ones are... I think the most likely thing is that she, like, basically met someone, decided to go on a trip. It lasted way longer than she expected because she didn't know where she was or what she was doing. And it ended in her homicide.
Yeah.
I think that's the most likely explanation. Now, like, unfortunately, in an age where people weren't able to track each other or, like, know everything about each other, it's hard to figure out. In today's day and age, she'd have a phone. You'd be able to track her within minutes. If her phone was off, you'd also be able to call a cell carrier. Be like, hey, when was the last time her phone connected to a cell tower? The police... That's something the police could do, where they could figure out where was her phone last. And then they could, like, narrow it down, figure out where she was. Credit cards, cameras. Like, we talk about cameras being everywhere. There are more cameras in Chicago than in London now. So, like...
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I know London was heavily surveilled.
London is the most heavily surveilled city in the world. Now Chicago and DC are numbers 2 and 3. And that's not including China, because we don't know the actual numbers out of Beijing and other Chinese countries or Russian countries. So we can only go with what we know about Western... the Western world. But in a lot of cases, there's enough cameras around to track people for at least a little while. Like, there are dead spots everywhere. That's a given, thankfully. Like, we don't want Big Brother everywhere, but it is a lot out there. But to that point, today would be a lot tougher. But at this point, it's been, 23, 24 years that she's been missing? Or since she was found dead?
Yeah. 23
years,
yep.
Yeah. So she's... It's going to be a cold case. And then eventually I think they're just going to stop... Like, right now, it's still an open case for the FBI because it technically crossed state lines. But I guess they're going to, like, her husband's dead. It's been 23 years. Like, they're going to close it soon, and that's it.
One other sighting I just want to tell you about.
Sure.
So I told you about the sighting in the store in Asheville where the woman had a conversation with her, but... There was another sighting at a campground near where her body was found, and the owner recalls that she drove up in a gray sedan filled with boxes and bags and asked if she could spend the night in her car there. And she was told she could not spend the night there in her car, so after that she drove off. Also, a deli owner in the same area told the Philadelphia City paper that Judy came to the store in a gray sedan and bought $30 worth of sandwiches and a toy truck.
Interesting.
And investigators, it should be noted, investigators found this sighting to be credible. So, I mean, that just... The fact that there were sightings in the area where her body was found makes it even crazier to me, because it's not like somebody abducted her in Philadelphia and then dumped her body. It's multiple people saw her in the area, and she was found like halfway up a mountain.
So reasonably, it wasn't an abduction, more like, I mean, it was an at-will relocation, or like she was running with somebody or with somebody. Like,
I think that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it was an abduction. I don't think this was against her will. I think she willingly did everything, and it ended poorly. Like, it was an affair gone wrong, or it was basically a one-day stand that just went further than anybody expected. She, like, I mean, here's a theory. She met somebody on her tours of Philadelphia, doing the touristy thing. Mm-hmm. Dude was like, okay, I'm going to North Carolina because that's where I'm from. And she just got in and went with him because she wasn't happy with what her life was.
But in that same...
Or she just wanted to be with this guy because he had something that she wanted. I don't know.
But what gets me about that, I can see that happening, but what gets me about that is her kids. Like her daughter said in the Unsolved Mystery segment, it could be that she did go willingly, and something happened to her before she had a chance to call and be like, I'm okay.
Maybe she went willingly and thought it would be a quick thing and then didn't think to call anybody, and then it turned into a kidnapping.
Her daughter did say, though, that she loved her husband, Jeff, and that she wouldn't have done something like this.
I mean, people who are... One of the funnier things is a lot of people who cause trouble are always said, oh, they were so quiet, they were so kind, until they do that one act that makes them batshit crazy. All the serial killers in the world. Maybe it was something like that, where she had a snap. I mean, we can make any theory you want. At the end of the day, reasonably speaking, I don't think she was taken from Philadelphia against her will. Now, I can't say that she was in North Carolina by her own will. Like, it may have been initially her, going there by her own cognizance, but she might have been kept there for 5 months against her will. I don't know. Like, there's so much that can be said or gone on in this situation that we'll never know.
One thing that I want to also note before we end here is that Judy was known by, her family and friends. They all said she would not be the type to just be quiet if she were being coerced or forced into something, that she would put up a fight. And she was also an experienced traveler. She had been to Thailand. That's just what her family and friends say. So that's worth noting. I mean, that doesn't mean it still couldn't have happened to her, but it's just something that I thought I'd bring up.
A lot of things can happen in a lot of different ways, and I think the key to understanding what happened and why, I think, is lost with Judy, because she would be the only one to tell you exactly why she did what she did, if she did anything, and then unless there's some evidence to link someone else to her body in North Carolina, we don't have any evidence or anything linking it to another person. So that's the other problem. We don't know where else to look. So there might be a killer out there that just went unpunished, or maybe he was caught for something else, because luckily most killers are crap. They make mistakes.
I did also hear that this area where she was found in the Pisgah National Forest, I heard that, or I read that this was an area where somebody familiar with the area would have had to know of the area. It wasn't like a place where you could just stumble upon.
It may not have been a common trail, but the father and son that found the body, they were hiking it.
So I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the story. Obviously, as Sohaib said,
alien abduction.
No. Anything really could have happened, and we don't know what was going through Judy's mind. We don't know what happened, obviously. That's why we're talking about it. But there are many theories that are discussed online. Did her husband do something? He was seen at the conference all day, but did he have something to do with this, either indirectly or directly?
He could have paid an assassin with a watch.
Did he pay an assassin with a watch?
A Rolex could get you quite a bit in that time.
Yeah. Did he, was their marriage tenuous, as one of Judy's friends seemed to think, at least?
Was she having an affair?
As she said on Unsolved
with a North Carolina guy.
Was she having an affair? Did she go to North Carolina willingly to meet someone? And if she did she plan on contacting her husband or her children at a later time and never got the chance?
Or did this part of North Carolina not have phones in 1997? Because remember, there were definitely no cell towers, but there are still parts of the country that don't even have landlines.
I mean, the thing that gets me about this is if she ran off, one, why didn't she run off when she had the chance, when she supposedly forgot her driver's license at the airport? Did she actually forget her driver's license, or was that a ploy to buy some more time so she could organize a different trip with someone else?
I feel like you could have done that on the plane ride.
If that was the case, why would she even go to Philadelphia? Why wouldn't she go straight from Boston to North Carolina?
Yeah, save the layover.
Yeah. So, or was it just like to meet up with him to say, oh, I really did screw up by leaving my driver's license at home. Here I am in Philadelphia. And then did she take off? And if so, why didn't she tell her children? She cared a lot about her children from all accounts that I saw. So it
could be a lot easier to disappear from a different city than your own city, right? So that might be part of it. But even
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Not really.
You don't think it's a good point?
No,
You're making it, but it's not a good point.
Yeah.
No, it is. If you're going to stage a disappearance, yeah, it makes sense to do it in a unfamiliar city than your own.
Maybe. But even then, I think your point is correct, though. It's like her kids are a big anchor, that could have kept her there from all accounts, that her kids liked her and she loved them and all that stuff. There's a lot of questions that don't make sense. And I think at the end of it, we're never going to know the answer. And that's why it's going to stay an unsolved mystery.
Okay, before we wrap up, Sohaib, final theory about what happened, your best guess. Go ahead.
Alien abduction accounts? Or
no!
Okay. Best guess. I think it's an affair gone wrong. What was going to be like a one-night stand in Philadelphia turned into a road trip to North Carolina and lasted a few months before it just went to hell.
So you think that maybe, or in this scenario, you think that maybe she took off intending to leave her husband and something happened to her months later. You don't think whatever happened to her right away when she disappeared?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think you find the body a few months, or they found the body 5 months later.
Yeah.
Depending on decay and everything, I think she had some time with whoever, maybe a couple months.
Without contacting her husband or her family?
Possibly. Actually, if you consider the age of decay and everything else and the fact that, it was all summer, that people were on this trail and didn't see anything, maybe it was only a day. Maybe she went to North Carolina with the one-night stand, and that's when he killed her and dumped her body. They didn't find it for 5 months. That's just as plausible.
Yeah, the thing that gets me, though, is North Carolina is not like a place from Philadelphia that it's like a day trip. That's
it's a 2-day drive.
Exactly. So if you're planning to meet your husband for a cocktail party in the evening, it doesn't make sense that you would leave and go to a place like North Carolina willingly. Well, the sightings in the store kind of suggest that she was there willingly.
Unless she didn't expect to come, or unless she was willingly, ditching her husband.
Right.
With the intention maybe to come back for her kids. Maybe that's what got her killed. Maybe it was she went with this guy who thought that she was just going to be with him, and when she said, I want to go back for my kids, he killed her. We don't know.
Okay, my best theory.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a case where my mind is completely boggled, but if I'm guessing, I would say, Judy's friends and family said she was very friendly and trusting. Maybe she encountered somebody in Philadelphia that convinced her to get on a train or in a car, and this person ended up taking her to North Carolina. And maybe she trusted them enough where she thought, everything was going to be fine. And obviously this person had nefarious intentions. But as we discussed, I think we're never going to know, sadly. And this is just a crazy case. I don't even know where to go from here.
I think we're done because
I think we
can keep going in circles, but I don't think it's going to change anything because it's just too many questions that we can talk about, but they'll never be answers.
Sadly, no. And, I would love to hear what you listeners think. So please feel free to get in touch with me at 143mysteries.com. Instagram at 143mysteries. I really would love to hear what you think of this case because I'll be honest, I have no idea. And
it kind of bugs me. I have
it
no
really
idea.
irritates me too. And I feel like we could do like 8 parts on this because I could just keep talking and talking. But thank you for listening. Sohaib, do you have anything else to add?
Nope, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Yeah, so leave me a comment, leave me a message. Feel free to shoot me any case suggestions you have. And thank you for listening, and we'll see you next year in 2021. This podcast has been approved by Skipper the Cat. Right, Skippy?